Hey, what's going on, YouTubers? This is Manga here, and I hope you're having a really good day. So with the release of Aquaman coming out pretty soon, we just saw the trailer and it looks amazing. I thought it would be a good idea to cover some of the characters within the movie, and one of the coolest characters that we see is Black Manta. Now, Black Manta really has a dark story, and he has been featured in different comic book series in the sense that his origin has changed on multiple occasions, but in each area it has really stayed dark. So what I'm going to do for this video is to cover Black Manta, not the things that he's done, but the things that has been done to him, so that we could get a better understanding of the villain. So let's get started. So Black Manta first appeared in the 1960s in Aquaman number 35. Now, Black Manta, as he is, he lived in Baltimore, and Baltimore is the place where he would go near the sea by Chesapeake Bay, and he would often play around and, look. It's famous for crabs, so we know that it's a time where he's usually close to the sea. One day he happened to be kidnapped, and he was kidnapped by some people who were at sea, and the kidnappers took him off the sea so that he could work. And during this time he was working on the boat, he wasn't only working, but his captors were also sexually abusing him and raping him. So as dark as that seems, as a young boy, he would go through this process it wasn't really understood for how long, but we did know that he was being raped and sexually abused while having to work. One day he happened to look outside the boat trying to escape, and he saw Aquaman towards mid portion of the sea with a couple of sea life animals, and he tried to call out for help. But much to his surprise, no one came to his rescue. So as you could hear already, this drove him to a place of near rage and a mental break, where he found a nearby knife, and he decided to defend himself and to kill his captors. Upon his escape, he was able to escape and to leave without having to deal with any of the authorities, but at the same time he still had all of those experiences in his head. And now I want to ask you all the question, right, before we go into the story a little bit more. What does that make you think about the character, right? When someone so young as a little boy has to go through the process of going through being captured, taken away from his family, having to work, and then being raped from time to time, that someone in his position may be on the verge of a mental break, and someone who would have to definitely go through PTSD. For those of you who don't know what PTSD is, that stands for post-traumatic stress syndrome, where someone is encapsulated in a specific thought and is kind of going through the rabbit hole, for lack of better words, and tunneling past stress about what they have gone through. Oftentimes we'll hear that soldiers who have been in war will go through PTSD, but it really lies into anyone who has gone through a traumatic episode or a traumatic experience, and in this case, Black Manta. Another story, which I'm going to combine into this one, really talks about the origin of him having autism, and to the aspect of him having severe autism, to the sense where he only feels somewhat of comfortability in water. And when I say water, I mean very cold water. That's the only way he could stabilize his own body, in the sense of being able to stay focused to some degree. Now, in this story, he happened to be brought to Arkham Asylum, and Arkham Asylum, we know Arkham Asylum is a place for criminals, some of the worst criminals in Arkham, which Batman has brought many of those villains. So in this aspect, just thinking about it a little more, think about a little boy who has autism and can't really control his biological movements, and at the same time his sense of focus, who now has to go to Arkham Asylum, which is a place for the worst of the worst villains. in which he's going to be experimented on. So the experiment, we're not really told why he was brought to Arkham Asylum for that, but I guess it's for them to do research on someone who I guess means nothing, right? And they're doing the research on him, and they do cure him of his autism. And I put quotes on quotes because the aspect of autism can really go into different, I would say different pathways, right? It isn't just one cookie cutter idea about what autism is, but in the sense they were able to stabilize him to an aspect where he doesn't need the cold water, and he's able to focus. But the chemicals that they imbued in his body also put him in a psychotic break. And a psychotic break meaning that he now feels like he wants to kill or hunt after people, which is why for a long time he was pretty much just really strung gung-ho on just trying to kill Aquaman, right? And that really came from his childhood aspect of not getting the help from the hero who he thought to be. And he would always hear about that he went through a traumatic experience as a child and he didn't receive the help. Now, this is drawn from a lot of different places, right? Now, while we know that this is definitely two stories, at the same time, it is a story that, if we think about it concurrently, Black Manta has gone through quite a bit. Another part of this story that we're gonna add on is that Black Manta was revealed in the comic books to be African American, and one of the aspects going back to his childhood and being held by his captors was that once he killed or decimated those captors, he hated the sea, and he hated the sea because he was taken to sea by his captors, but he had it in his head that was really just with a strong conviction that he would rule the sea. And this comes into the effect of his disagreement or wanting to take over the sea, because the inhabitants of the sea happen to be the Atlanteans. So this is where his main rivalry came with Aquaman. Now, there's quite a bit more that goes into the story in the sense of his conflict with Aquaman and also his father, and many other stories. But the main concept that I wanted everyone to understand when it comes to the story is Black Manta isn't a cookie cutter villain. He isn't someone who just wants to rule the world and that's it. For some of the story segments, he wanted to take over the sea in the sense of civil rights movements, so that he wanted people of color, African Americans, to be able to take over the sea, since they were so oppressed on land for the time being of slavery and working without any rights, which was very reminiscent from him being taken from where he lived in Baltimore and being forced to work on a boat, and also going under certain circumstances that dehumanized him, and dehumanizing him meaning that he wasn't treated like a human being, and that goes against every human rights that he could have had, because he had none, and he was being raped along the way. So in this sense, as you could hear, Black Manta is a complex character that will make you empathize for his transition into being a villain. It isn't something where he's just, I'm deciding to just take over the world, or I just want to fight Superman. And I'm not knocking any of the other villains, but he's very reminiscent to, I would say, Killmonger from Black Panther. Now, while that's from Marvel, at the same time, he's a character that has gone through so much that you could put yourself inside of his head and then come to the agreement that you may have made similar choices to go against your captors. That you have the PTSD that makes you want to do things that you're not fully in control of. So all you're left is with the partial sanity of what you remember. And if all of those times happen to be negative, then your only mode of strength is to take what you want, because everything has been taken from you. And again, I know this is a little bit different from the normal story stories that you hear or the different videos that I'm usually making, but I wanted you to understand that this is a complex character that has complex stories, that if we really were to streamline these stories together, Black Manta is a person that we see a little bit differently. Yes, he's doing the wrong things. Yes, he has a murderous intent, but his story kind of bridges the aspect of how far trauma can go in order for someone to change, if they're not given the outlet to make positive choices, to have the outcome that they actually want because they were forced to have decisions made for them. But anyway, sorry to end this video like this, but it's just a thinking face of that when you go to see Black Manta, when you go to see Aquaman, that you take the character for you see the character through a different lens and a different perspective. That he isn't just a cool looking character that has a black suit and a helmet that kind of looks bug-like, but that represents a manta, but it's someone inside who's cried as a young person, who's went through the physical and emotional trauma, to then someone who decided to stand up and be strong, to then overcome what they were because they saw themselves as weak, and then to become stronger. This is Zen Manga, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a like, a subscribe, share this video, right? There's a lot of origin stories out there, but I wanted to really tell the story in a way that really hits the psyche of the viewer, so that you could think about it from a different aspect rather than thinking it's just a regular comic book character. Not too sure where all of the I guess the inspiration came from, but I could assume that a lot of the inspiration came from slavery, civil rights movements, and or anyone who just goes through any kind of traumatic experiences that needs to overcome it through becoming stronger. But in this sense, Black Manta went through a dark path. All right, everyone, take care. Peace.